Hello students and families, this is Ms. Kaufman and today we're going to be talking about standards-based grading. So what is standards-based grading? Basically, it measures student progress based on the Missouri State Standards. They are the skills and concepts that sixth graders are expected to know by the end of the year. They have them for every grade level for ELA, math, and science. So standards-based grading provides students and teachers and families with a specific and accurate look at learning goals and at progress. So we can really dive into each individual standard and give specific feedback on what students need to do to improve and to be ready for the next grade level. How does it work? So in traditional grading, you would receive a score of 7 out of 10 or 70% or 14 out of 20, which would basically be a C, an average score. With standards-based grading, students receive a score on a 5-point scale, which shows their level of mastery on one specific skill or standard, like summary. For example, in traditional grading, let's say that students read a biography on Jackie Robinson. The student then took a quiz over the text and it covered a variety of standards. The student scored a 7 out of 10, which is a 70%, or a C. Basically, this means that the student read and understood the text at an average level. The student passed the quiz, but they were tripped up by a few of the questions. It doesn't necessarily give you specific feedback on what kinds of questions the student was confused on. With standards-based grading, the students do the same reading. They read the biography of Jackie Robinson, and instead of a quiz, perhaps they write a reflection of the biography, and they're focusing on two different standards. The first standard they would focus on is determining the central idea. And you can see the student scored a 4, which means they are accomplished in the standard. They really know what they're doing 90% of the time, and they're able to identify the central idea, the main idea. The second standard that they were tested on with this reflection was the development of ideas throughout the text. Basically, that means they're able to find evidence from the text and support their main idea. They're able to find details and use them correctly. So the students struggled with this one a little more. They got a 2, which is proficient, which would be a decent score that would end up to be a C on traditional grading. But we know that the student needs a little bit of additional practice with this. And what's great with standards-based grading is that the student can try again. They can do a reassessment and try again to get a higher score on this standard. But since we know they already can find the central idea, they wouldn't have to retest that. They'd only have to retest part of it. This means that the student will receive 2 separate grades for this assignment in the gradebook. So let's look at what that would be. In the gradebook, students would still receive the traditional A, B, C, D, or F because of how Hazelwood has set up their grading scale. However, they would also receive the scores on the 5-point scale. Anything that's a 4, 4.5, a 5 means they're accomplished. And we're going to dig into what each of these means a little bit later. A 3 or a 3.5 is secured. That would leave them with a B. A 2, 2.5 is proficient, and that would leave them with a C. And then a 1 or a 1.5 is developing, and that means they have a D, which obviously means they need some more work on it. It would be very rare for a student to receive this last score of a 0, which means there's insufficient data. Basically, this means that the student is missing an assignment. So if they had this score, they wouldn't have it for very long because they would be redoing the assignment or continuing to finish it or working specifically with the teachers to get that work done. So it'd be very rare for a student to actually have an F. So a typical gradebook, and this looks really confusing at first. So you can see across the top that they're listed out every single standard. Instead of saying homework number 1, homework number 2, we're focusing on each standard. So the first column is for summary. And you can see that Bob got a 3, so he ended up with a B. Sally got a 4, so she ended up with a 90, an A. And Ted got a 2.5, which is a 75, a C. The numbers that are outlined in red, the second numbers, are the ones that are actually in the gradebook so that we can align with Hazelwood's policies. The numbers across the top are the standards-based grading. So students will see both of those scores. They'll see the top numbers on their papers, on their homework, on their assignments, and then they will see the bottom numbers in the gradebook. The numbers mean the same thing. You can see that there are 11 different standards that are covered we will have many standards throughout the year. Some of them will repeat from trimester to trimester. Some of them will have specific focuses only in certain trimesters, depending on what our different units are. If you average all of these scores out, right now, if none of these students do any reassessments or tries for any exceeding or any further mastery, they would all end up with Bs. Oh, sorry. So Bob ends up with a 84B, Sally ends up with an 81B, and Ted also ends up with an 84B. So that is if they decide to do no more reassessments, which, of course, with standards-based grading is always an option. Students have multiple assignments and attempts at each standard throughout the trimester. So instead of just one activity that covers summary, we will visit summary over and over. Students will receive a score over and over for summary. That score will be averaged and put into the gradebook. So the scores can change and students can always improve their scores to get a better grade. If students decide that they would like to reassess a standard, our goal is to do one reassessment standard per week. So they have to schedule that with myself or Miss Hatcher on either lunchtime or independent work time, or even possibly staying after school if they need to do that, so that they can get some further instruction and then reassess and bring up their level of mastery. So to go a little deeper into the different levels, the very bottom level, like I said, is very rare for students to get. It's a 0. It means the student hasn't even attempted the standard. They didn't finish an assignment or they're missing it. So we will work really hard for students to not receive zeros, because they should be able to get all of their work done. If a student receives a 0, this is a failing grade. It ends up being an F. So the student must meet with myself or Miss Hatcher in order to figure out what is our game plan to bring that score up. The second score is a 1. So a 1 or a 1.5 means a student is developing. They're starting to understand the concept, and they can usually repeat the information, but they can't necessarily apply it to a new situation. So if they're receiving 1s or 1.5, they have to do a reassessment. They're not given a choice. They must reattempt it, because this equals a D in the grade book, and we don't want to see Ds. We want our students to be succeeding a lot higher than that. So they must do a challenging task in order to up their score. For a 2, that means that the student is proficient. They understand the concept, and most of the time they can apply it and they can analyze it. They might still have some difficulty, so we want to keep reassessing and getting a little harder. They have the option at this level to try a challenging task and do a reassessment. For level 3, this means the student is secure. This is a B level. They understand, they can apply, they can analyze, they can evaluate, do all that higher level thinking. Usually in class, they're doing this, they're doing great. They might have a little difficulty applying it to a new situation that they haven't seen in class before. So in order to get a 3, students can't have any scores less than a 2. And again, they still do have the option to try a challenging task, a reassessment, to get a higher score. With a 4, students have accomplished the standard. They know how to apply it to a new situation. They can create new meaning, and they've received 3s and 4s for this standard every time we've done it in class. Again, with standards-based grading, they can try for a higher score. They can go for a 5 and hit that challenging task. A 5 means that the student has exceeded the standard. This is a 100%. They know it every time we do it. They can transfer it to a new situation. They can create new meaning, and they can probably teach this skill to other people. So they will have attempted and completed a challenging task. They've done an extension activity, and they can go above and beyond. And that is our 5 standards. Coming up soon, you will see an example of standards-based grading. Thanks for watching. Bye.